Right now, 70% of this planet is covered in water you would happily swim in. That is the exception, not the rule. The ocean has been purple. It has been a boiling salt desert 2 miles below sea level. It has been filled with a gas that kills you in one breath. None of this is science fiction. Every one of these oceans actually existed, and the last one on this list has not gone anywhere: the Purple Poison Sea. If you assume the ocean has always been blue, this is the era that ruins it. Around 1.8 billion years ago, it turned violet and stayed that way for a billion years. Because the young atmosphere held barely a trace of oxygen, none of it reached the deep water, and everything below the surface went chemically dead. And dead water is not empty water. It filled with bacteria that breathe sulfur the way you breathe air, exhaling hydrogen sulfide, the gas behind the smell of rotten eggs. From orbit, you would not have seen a blue marble. You would have seen a milky lavender one. But you would not need to go near the water to die here. Hydrogen sulfide is heavier than air, so it pooled along the coastline in invisible drifts, and it destroys your sense of smell before it kills you. You would stop smelling rotten eggs, decide the air had cleared, and take one more breath. How far that poison spread is still argued over. But the stalemate held for a billion years, a stretch geologists call the boring billion, because almost nothing evolved. When it finally broke and oxygen reached the deep, the first complex animals appear almost immediately after. Everything alive today crawled out of that. The dead ocean. 252 million years ago, the sea stopped working. Every ocean on Earth at once. It started in Siberia, where volcanoes opened along cracks in the crust and burned through underground beds of coal, setting the planet's fossil fuel alight from below. Carbon dioxide poured out and temperatures climbed hard. Because warm water cannot hold as much dissolved gas as cold water, the ocean began to suffocate from the bottom up. The currents that ventilate the deep shut down, and the dead zone climbed toward the surface. Then sulfur bacteria took that water over, and this time the hydrogen sulfide did not stay in the sea. It bled into the sky. If you stood on a Permian beach, the water would look wrong before it smelled wrong. Milky, still streaked with slicks, nothing moving in it. But the gas did more than kill whatever it touched. Enough of it rose to attack the ozone layer itself. When the volcanoes stopped, as much as 96% of marine species were gone. Not 96% of animals. Of species, reefs disappeared from this planet for 10 million years. Every fish and whale and crab alive today came from the few percent that got through. The salt desert sea. 6 million years ago, the Mediterranean vanished. Not shrank, vanished. Africa ground north into Europe until the Strait of Gibraltar squeezed shut. And that strait is the sea's only real link to the Atlantic. Because the region is hot and dry, the Mediterranean evaporates faster than every river feeding it can refill. Close the door. And the arithmetic is brutal. Within about 1,000 years, the whole sea was gone. What was left was a basin 2 miles below sea level, floored with a crust of salt in places a mile thick, blinding white to the horizon. If you stood down there, the pressure would keep your ears popping all day, and summer on the salt would push well past 120 degrees. But the terrifying part is not the desert. It is the day it ended. The barrier at Gibraltar failed, and once water cuts rock, it moves faster, and once it moves faster, it cuts more. A leak became a canyon, and the canyon handed the Atlantic a hole 2 miles deep. At its peak, that flood is estimated at 1,000 times the Amazon, moving at highway speed. The water rose 30 feet in a single day. The Mediterranean refilled in under 2 years, so the sea on every holiday postcard is barely 5 million years old. It is younger than the first upright apes. The Rust Ocean, scoop up a glass of seawater 2.5 billion years ago, and it would be clear, faintly green, and loaded with metal. Because there was no oxygen dissolved in it. Iron could not rust. It simply dissolved the way sugar dissolves in tea. Volcanic vents fed iron into the sea for over 1 billion years, and it stayed there, invisible. The ocean was a tank of dissolved metal. Standing on that shore, the water would not be the danger. The air would be No oxygen in it, no ozone above it, and unfiltered ultraviolet coming straight down. Then, cyanobacteria invented photosynthesis and started leaking oxygen into the water. The moment oxygen met dissolved iron, it rusted, and rust does not stay dissolved. It fell for hundreds of millions of years, settling as red mud in pulses, building striped rock on the sea floor. Dark iron, pale silica, over and over. But here is the part that should stop you. Well over 90% of the iron ore mined anywhere on Earth comes out of those stripes. The steel in a car, a fridge, a kitchen knife, the frame of the building you were sitting in was once dissolved in seawater. Pulled out by bacteria that had no idea they were doing it. Every skyscraper standing today is made of a sea that rusted. The ocean that is still poisoned. Everything so far is gone. This one is on the map. The Black Sea looks completely ordinary, and millions of people swim in it every summer. The top few hundred feet are normal water. Below that is the largest body of dead water on the planet. Because its only link to the Mediterranean is one narrow, shallow strait, and huge rivers pour fresh water in from the north, the water has settled into two permanent layers that never turn over. Nothing carries oxygen down. Below 500 feet, there is none at all, and sulfur bacteria have filled it with hydrogen sulfide. About 90% of the Black Sea by volume is poisoned right now, today. But the consequence is not what you would expect. Without oxygen, the things that eat wood and rope cannot live, so nothing rots. In 2018, a survey team found a Greek merchant ship a mile down, sitting upright, mast still standing. It was 2,400 years old. It looked like it sank last year, and the mechanism keeping that sea dead is the same one from the Permian. Warm, layered water that stops mixing and stops carrying oxygen down. It is not an ancient process. It is running in that basin while you watch this. So the real story is not that Earth used to have terrifying oceans. It is that the blue, breathable one outside your window is the strange one. Which of these would you actually want to see with your own eyes if you could come home safely afterward? Because none of them were disasters at the time. Everyone was just the ocean, doing what the ocean was doing that day.